My name is Cornelia Reynolds, 32 years old, and I never thought I would be the daughter who emptied her parents' bank accounts. But when my father and his new fiancée demanded I apologize for something I never did or be banned from their wedding, they forced my hand. Family has always meant everything to me, which made their betrayal cut deeper than any knife could. Before I tell you how I turned their financial world upside down overnight, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button if family drama gets your blood pumping. Growing up, I always thought our family was special. My parents, Franklin and Diana Reynolds, seemed like the perfect couple through my childhood eyes. They had their arguments like any married couple, but nothing prepared me for the day when I was 15, and they sat me down to tell me they were getting divorced. I remember that moment vividly, sitting at our kitchen table, the afternoon sunlight filtering through the curtains as my world collapsed around me. My mother, Diana, moved to Arizona shortly after the divorce. She said she needed a fresh start away from the memories that haunted our New England home. Contact with her became increasingly rare, just occasional birthday calls and generic Christmas cards. I never understood why she chose to distance herself, not just from my father, but from me too. As a teenager, I spent countless nights crying myself to sleep, wondering what I had done wrong to make her leave. That left just my father and me. Franklin Reynolds was a proud man who worked as a financial advisor at a mid-sized firm in Boston. He was always practical, methodical, and somewhat reserved with his emotions, but he did his best to raise me alone. In those early years after Mom left, we developed a special bond. Every Sunday, we would make pancakes together, a little tradition that somehow made our smaller family feel whole again. "You and me against the world, Cornelia," he would say, flipping pancakes with surprising dexterity for a man who had rarely cooked before the divorce. During my senior year of high school, I received a scholarship to attend Stanford University. It was my dream school, and I had worked incredibly hard to make it happen. But just 2 months before I was set to leave, disaster struck. My father was involved in a serious car accident that left him with a broken leg, fractured ribs, and a severe concussion. The doctors said he would need months of rehabilitation and care. I still remember standing in that hospital room, staring at my father hooked up to monitors, his face pale and bruised. In that moment, I made the decision that would alter the course of my life. I deferred my scholarship and stayed home to take care of him. How could I leave him alone when he had been there for me after Mom left? "You can go, Cornelia. I will be fine," he insisted from his hospital bed, but the pain in his eyes told a different story. "Stanford will still be there next year, Dad." "You need me now," I replied, squeezing his hand. What was meant to be a 1-year deferral turned into a complete change of plans. I enrolled in a local college, instead studying finance like my father. During the day, I attended classes, and in the evenings I helped Dad with his physical therapy exercises, cooked meals, and managed our household. As my father slowly recovered, I started working at a small investment firm. I was good with numbers just like him, and I quickly moved up the ranks. By the time I was 25, I was the youngest senior financial analyst at the company, making enough money to help support both of us comfortably. Our roles had reversed in many ways. I had become the caretaker, the provider. "I am so proud of you, Cornelia," my father told me on my 26th birthday. "You sacrificed so much for me, and look at you now. You are stronger than I ever was." As Dad regained his independence, he asked me to help him organize his finances. He had accumulated a decent retirement fund and some investments over the years, but the medical bills had taken a toll. I set up a budget plan for him, helped restructure his investments, and even added my name to his bank accounts to help manage bills and expenses. "I trust you completely with this," he said as we sat in the bank signing the paperwork to make me a joint account holder. "You understand finances better than I do now." It was during this period of recovery and rebuilding that Jessica Madison entered our lives. My father met her at a charity golf tournament his company sponsored. Jessica, 42 and divorced, worked as a real estate agent specializing in luxury properties. She was everything. My mother wasn't loud, vivacious, and always impeccably dressed in designer clothes. At first, I was happy for my father. After 8 years alone, he deserved some companionship. Jessica seemed to bring a spark back into his life that had been missing since the divorce. He started dressing better, got a new haircut, and even joined a gym. I hadn't seen him this energetic in years. Jessica had a daughter from her previous marriage, Allison, who was 27, just 5 years younger than me. Allison worked at her mother's real estate office as an assistant and still lived at home with Jessica. The few times we met, she seemed pleasant enough, if a bit spoiled. She drove a brand new Mercedes that Jessica had bought her as a birthday gift, despite Allison having no college education or established career. As the weeks passed, I began to notice things about Jessica that raised red flags. She constantly talked about the wealthy clients she worked with, the expensive restaurants she frequented, and the exclusive vacation spots she visited. She seemed obsessed with appearances and status. Whenever the conversation turned to finances, her eyes would light up with interest. "Franklin tells me you handle all his investments," she said to me one evening over dinner at our house. "That must give you access to quite a bit of money." The comment made me uncomfortable, but I brushed it off. I just help him organize things. It is his money. Jessica started spending more time at our house gradually, leaving items behind her expensive perfume, creating an invisible cloud in our once simple home. She would rearrange furniture without asking and make comments about how the house could use a woman's touch again. My father seemed blind to any of Jessica's flaws. He laughed at all her jokes, agreed with all her opinions, and began consulting her before making any decisions. It was like watching a different person emerge, someone eager to please and impress. One evening, as I was helping Dad with some paperwork, he casually mentioned that he had loaned Jessica $10,000 to help her through a temporary cash flow problem with her business. "Did she say when she will pay you back?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "It is not a loan, Cornelia. It is a gift," he replied defensively. "She has been going through a rough patch with some property deals falling through." That was the first moment I truly felt uneasy about Jessica's intentions. How could a luxury real estate agent who dressed in designer clothes and bought her adult daughter a Mercedes be having financial problems? But every time I tried to broach the subject with my father, he would shut down the conversation. "You just do not want me to be happy," he accused once, after I gently suggested he might want to slow things down with Jessica. "You have been the only woman in my life for so long that you cannot stand the competition." His words stung especially because they could not have been further from the truth. All I wanted was for him to be happy, but with someone who truly loved him for who he was, not for his bank account. As I watched Jessica expertly weave herself into the fabric of our lives, I could not shake the feeling that we were all being manipulated by a master player. Little did I know just how right I was, and how catastrophic the consequences would be for our once close-knit family. 8 months into their relationship, my father called me on a Sunday morning, his voice brimming with excitement. "Cornelia, I have wonderful news. Jessica and I are engaged. We are getting married in 6 months." I felt my stomach drop but forced enthusiasm into my voice. "Wow, Dad, that is big news. Congratulations." "We want you to be part of the wedding planning," he continued. "Jessica already has so many ideas." Those ideas became clear when I met them for lunch the following weekend. Jessica had created an elaborate vision board for the wedding featuring photos of luxurious venues, exotic flower arrangements, and designer wedding gowns. "We are thinking the Langham Hotel for the reception," Jessica announced, showing me pictures of one of Boston's most expensive venues, and of course, a honeymoon in the Maldives. I nearly choked on my water. The Langham Hotel could easily cost $30,000 for a reception, and a trip to the Maldives would be another $15,000 at minimum. My father lived comfortably, but he was not wealthy by any means. Most of his money was tied up in retirement accounts and modest investments that I helped manage. Later that evening, when Jessica excused herself to take a phone call, I carefully broached the subject with my father. "Dad, have you two discussed a budget for the wedding? The Langham is pretty expensive." He waved dismissively. "Jessica deserves the best, Cornelia. This is her dream wedding." "But what about your retirement plans? We talked about being conservative with spending so you could retire at 65. His expression hardened. "I did not realize I needed your permission to spend my own money." "That is not what I meant," I backpedaled. "I just want to make sure you are thinking long-term." "Jessica and I are the long-term now," he replied curtly. "I would appreciate your support instead of your financial lectures." That conversation marked a turning point in our relationship. My father, who had always valued my financial advice now, seemed to view it as interference. Jessica had positioned herself as the priority in his life, and I was increasingly pushed to the periphery. Over the next few weeks, I noticed I was being excluded from family decisions. Dad and Jessica would make plans without telling me until the last minute. When I would stop by the house, I would often find Jessica and Allison there laughing with my father like they had been family forever, while I felt like an intruder in my own childhood home. One evening, while helping my father organize some tax documents, I discovered something alarming. He had transferred $50,000, nearly half of his liquid savings, to a joint account with Jessica. "Dad, when did you open this account with Jessica?" I asked, showing him the statement. He snatched the paper from my hands. "That is none of your business, Cornelia. I am a grown man, capable of managing my own finances. I am just concerned. That is a lot of money to move so quickly. Jessica and I are getting married. What is mine is hers," he said firmly. "You need to accept that things are changing." As the weeks passed, my father's attitude toward me continued to cool. The man who once called me every day now took days to return my texts. Our Sunday pancake tradition fell by the wayside as he began spending weekends with Jessica at her lake house. Meanwhile, Allison seemed to be taking my place in my father's life. She started calling him Daddy Frank and would post pictures of them together on social media with captions like, "So blessed to finally have the father I always deserved." Each post felt like a deliberate jab, especially when my father would comment with heart emojis and affectionate replies. The tension at home became unbearable when Jessica decided to redecorate my childhood bedroom without consulting me, turning it into a guest room that looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel catalog. "I still stay here sometimes," I protested when I discovered my personal items boxed up in the garage. "Well, you are an adult with your own place now," Jessica replied with a saccharine smile. "And we needed the space for when Allison stays over." When I tried to talk to my father about it, he sided with Jessica. "You are 32 years old, Cornelia. It is time to cut the cord a little." The irony was painful. I had postponed my dreams to take care of him, and now he was suggesting I was too dependent. One day, I overheard Jessica on the phone in the kitchen thinking the house was empty. "Once we are married, I will convince him to update his will. Do not worry about the daughter. She will be phased out soon enough." My blood ran cold. I recorded the tail end of the conversation on my phone, though Jessica's words were too vague to serve as any real evidence of wrongdoing. When I cautiously mentioned my concerns to a family friend, word got back to Jessica. She wasted no time in spinning the situation, telling my father that I was spreading lies about her out of jealousy. "Your daughter cannot accept that you have found happiness again," she told him tearfully at dinner, while I sat across the table stunned by her performance. "She has been telling people I am only with you for your money. Is that true, Cornelia?" My father demanded, his expression hard. "No, I expressed concern because I overheard something concerning, but that is not how I framed it," I tried to explain. "Always the same excuses," Jessica interjected. "Always trying to come between us." My father reached across the table to comfort Jessica, effectively choosing sides. "I am sorry she has been making things difficult for you, sweetheart." In that moment, as he consoled the woman who was manipulating him while giving me a cold stare, I felt like I had lost my father completely. The man who had taught me to value truth and integrity was now blind to the deception happening right in front of him. What hurt most was how quickly Jessica had managed to rewrite our family narrative. In her version, I was no longer the daughter who had sacrificed for her father, but a jealous, controlling woman trying to sabotage his happiness. And my father, the man who had once trusted me implicitly, was now viewing me through the distorted lens Jessica had crafted. As wedding preparations continued, I found myself increasingly isolated. My opinions were dismissed, my presence barely tolerated. At dress fittings and menu tastings, Jessica would position Allison front and center while relegating me to the background. After all, Jessica would say loudly enough for me to hear, "Allison has such exquisite taste. She gets that from me." Each slight, each exclusion was calculated to push me further away, and it was working. I felt like a stranger in what was once my family, watching helplessly, as my father was enveloped in a web of manipulation that I seemed powerless to break. The breaking point came 3 weeks before the wedding. My father called asking me to come over immediately for a family meeting. His tone was grave, and my stomach knotted with apprehension as I drove to the house. When I arrived, Jessica, Allison, and my father were sitting in the living room, their faces solemn. Jessica's eyes were red as if she had been crying, but there was something theatrical about her distress. "Sit down, Cornelia," my father said, his voice uncharacteristically cold. I perched on the edge of an armchair, feeling like I was about to face a firing squad. "What is going on?" Jessica dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "My diamond necklace is missing, the one Franklin gave me for our engagement." I remembered the necklace well. It had cost my father $15,000, money he had taken from his retirement account despite my objections. Jessica had shown it off at every opportunity, making sure everyone knew its value. "That is terrible," I said cautiously. "When did you notice it was gone?" "After you visited yesterday," Jessica replied, her accusation clear in her tone. I felt a chill run through me. "Are you suggesting I took it?" "It was in my jewelry box before you came over," Jessica said. "And now it is gone. No one else has been in the house." "That is not true. Allison was here when I stopped by." I looked to my father for support, but his expression remained stony. "How dare you try to blame my daughter?" Jessica's voice rose. "This is exactly the kind of behavior I have been telling Franklin about. You cannot stand that he bought me something so valuable." "Dad, you cannot seriously think I would steal from you," I said, my voice beginning to shake. Before he could respond, Allison spoke up. "Actually, I found something." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet pouch. This was in the guest bathroom, trash wrapped in tissues. She emptied the pouch onto the coffee table. Out fell a receipt from a pawn shop dated that morning with no name, but with an item description that matched Jessica's necklace. "I never went near the bathroom," I protested. "This is ridiculous. Someone is setting me up." "The evidence speaks for itself," Jessica said smugly. "Who else would have a motive?" I turned to my father, desperate for him to see through this obvious setup. "Dad, you know me. I would never steal anything, especially not from you. This is clearly a setup." My father sighed heavily, looking older than I had ever seen him. "The necklace is gone, Cornelia. The receipt was found in our house after your visit. What am I supposed to think?" "You are supposed to trust your daughter," I exclaimed, tears of frustration welling in my eyes. "The daughter who put her life on hold to take care of you after your accident. The daughter who has never given you any reason to doubt her integrity." "People change," Jessica interjected. "Franklin told me how you have been questioning his financial decisions lately. Perhaps you felt entitled to some of that money yourself." "That is not true," I said through gritted teeth. "I have been concerned because you seem to be bleeding him dry with all these extravagant wedding plans." My father's face hardened. "That is enough, Cornelia. I have heard the concerns from Jessica about your jealousy. But I never thought you would go this far." "Jealousy, Dad? I am trying to protect you," I was almost shouting now, desperate for him to see reason. Jessica placed a hand on my father's arm, her expression a perfect mask of pained sympathy. "Franklin, I think we need to be clear about the consequences here. I cannot have someone who would steal from us at our wedding." My father nodded slowly. "Cornelia, we are prepared to forget this incident on one condition. You need to apologize to Jessica and admit what you did." I stared at him in disbelief. Apologize for something I did not do. Admit to a theft I did not commit. "It is the only way forward," he said firmly. "Otherwise, you are not welcome at the wedding, or in this house." The ultimatum hung in the air, suffocating me. Jessica watched with barely concealed triumph while Allison smirked beside her. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice eerily calm despite the storm raging inside me. "You want me to falsely confess to stealing and apologize to the woman who is clearly framing me, or I am banned from your wedding?" "Those are the terms," my father replied. "Jessica deserves an apology." I stood up, my legs shaking, but my resolve firm. "Then I guess I will not be at your wedding." I will not apologize for something I did not do, not even for you, Dad. Cornelia, do not be dramatic, my father started, but I cut him off. No, you have made your choice very clear. You have chosen your new family over the daughter who has stood by you through everything. I turned to Jessica. Congratulations, you got what you wanted. As I walked out of that house, my childhood home that now felt like foreign territory, I was overwhelmed by a sense of loss so profound it felt physical. The father I knew would never have believed such an obvious lie about me. The father I loved would have defended me without question. But that father was gone, replaced by a man so thoroughly manipulated that he was willing to cast aside our bond for a woman he had known less than a year. In my car, I finally let the tears come. I cried for the relationship that seemed irreparably broken, for the betrayal that cut deeper than any physical wound. But beneath the pain, something else was beginning to stir. A determination that would soon transform my grief into action. Because in that moment of absolute rejection, I made a decision. If my father was willing to believe I was capable of theft, then perhaps I should show him what I was truly capable of when pushed too far. I moved in with my best friend Natalie, temporarily unable to face returning to my empty apartment where every corner held memories of Sunday dinners with my father or movie nights when he would visit. Natalie, who had known me since college, was furious on my behalf. I cannot believe your dad would fall for something so obviously staged, she fumed as she helped me bring in my overnight bag. That necklace is probably sitting in Jessica's secret jewelry box while she is playing the victim. I collapsed onto her couch, emotionally exhausted. The worst part is how easily he believed I could do something like that. 20 years of me being honest, responsible, loyal, all erased by this woman he has known for less than a year. That night, I barely slept, replaying the confrontation in my mind, trying to understand how things had gone so wrong so quickly. By morning, I had moved from devastation to determination. If Jessica was who I suspected she was, there would be evidence. I took a personal day from work and began researching. First, I looked up Jessica's real estate license and business history. Her company website featured testimonials from satisfied clients and photos of luxury properties, but something felt off. Many of the properties listed as recently sold had been on the market for years, according to public records. Then I had a breakthrough. A search for Jessica Madison real estate fraud turned up a small article from 6 years ago in a local business journal. Jessica Madison, operating under her previous married name Jessica Thornton, had been investigated for misleading clients about property values and pocketing the difference on sales. The charges had ultimately been dismissed due to insufficient evidence, but she had surrendered her real estate license in Connecticut before moving to Massachusetts and obtaining a new one. Bingo, I whispered, printing the article. But I needed more. I reached out to a colleague at work who had connections in the financial investigation field. Without revealing too many details, I asked if he could help me look into someone's background more thoroughly. 2 days later, he sent me a file that confirmed my worst fears. Jessica had a pattern of targeting wealthy, vulnerable men, particularly widowers or recent divorcees. Her ex-husband, Robert Thornton, had filed for bankruptcy a year after their divorce, claiming Jessica had manipulated him into taking out multiple loans and maxing out credit cards for business investments that never materialized. Most damning of all, there was a police report from 3 years ago where another fiancé had accused Jessica of staging a theft of expensive jewelry only to drop the charges mysteriously weeks later. The case notes suggested a settlement had been reached privately. Armed with this information, I tried calling my father, hoping he would at least hear me out. The call went straight to voicemail. I texted him the articles and information I had found. His only reply, "Stop trying to sabotage my relationship. I will not discuss this unless you are ready to apologize to Jessica." Meanwhile, word about my banishment from the wedding spread through our extended family and friends circle. My phone filled with messages from relatives and family friends, some expressing sympathy, others urging me to just apologize for the sake of family harmony. "Just say sorry, even if you did not do it," my cousin Laura suggested. "Is your pride really worth missing your father's wedding?" What they did not understand was that this was not about pride. It was about truth. About refusing to validate a lie that was part of a larger scheme to isolate my father from those who truly cared about him. A week after the confrontation, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Using the online banking access I still had as a joint account holder, I noticed my father had begun transferring large sums of money from his retirement accounts into the joint checking account he shared with Jessica. Nearly $200,000, representing the majority of his liquid assets, had been moved. This was far beyond wedding expenses. This was Jessica positioning herself to access his entire life savings. That same day, while scrolling through social media, I saw a post from Allison that twisted the knife further. It was a photo of her, Jessica, and my father at a cake tasting with the caption, "Wedding planning with the parents. So grateful Dad is marrying us into such a wonderful family. Number new beginnings, number family first." The comments section was filled with congratulations, including one from my father saying, "So happy to have you as my daughter too, Allison." Each word felt like a physical blow. I had been erased from the family narrative, while Jessica and Allison were rewriting the story to cast themselves as the loving, supportive family members my father deserved. Later that evening, I received an unexpected message from a man named David Thornton. "I saw your inquiry about Jessica. I am Robert Thornton's son. We need to talk." We met at a coffee shop the next day. David, a man in his 30s with tired eyes and a wary expression, did not mince words. "Jessica destroyed my father financially and emotionally," he told me, stirring his untouched coffee. By the time he realized what was happening, she had access to all his accounts. She claimed business investments, family emergencies, anything to get him to transfer money. When he finally confronted her, she had already emptied their joint accounts and filed for divorce. "Did he try to get the money back?" I asked. David laughed bitterly. "He tried, but she had covered her tracks well, making him sign documents authorizing the transfers. It was all technically legal, because he had given her access. By the time the divorce was finalized, he was bankrupt and she walked away with everything." My stomach tightened with dread. "She is doing the same thing to my father." "That is her pattern," David confirmed. "Find a financially stable man, preferably one with limited family support. Isolate him from anyone who might see through her act, then bleed him dry." "What happened to your father?" I asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. David's eyes darkened. "He lost everything. His home, his retirement, his self-respect. He moved in with me for a while, but the depression was too much. He took his own life 2 years ago." I gasped, reaching across the table to touch his hand. "I am so sorry." "That is why I reached out when I saw your inquiry," he said. "I recognized her pattern immediately from what you described. The false accusation, the ultimatum, the isolation tactics. End of close. End of close. You need to act quickly before she does irreparable damage." As I left that meeting, a weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders. This was no longer just about a stolen necklace or a wedding invitation. This was about saving my father from a predator who had already destroyed at least one life. I tried one more time to reach out to my father, sending him a carefully worded email outlining my concerns and the information I had gathered, including my conversation with David. I attached the police reports and news articles pleading with him to at least consider the possibility that Jessica was not who she claimed to be. His response came the next day, short and devastating. "I have blocked your email from my account. Do not contact me again with these lies. Jessica and I are consulting a lawyer about your harassment." That night, as I sat in Natalie's guest room staring at that email, I felt something inside me harden. My father had made his choice despite all evidence and warnings. Now I needed to make mine. If he would not protect himself, perhaps I needed to take matters into my own hands. The question was, how far was I willing to go to save him from himself? And at what point did protection become its own form of betrayal? 3 weeks passed in a surreal blur. I returned to work, went through the motions of daily life, but inside I was caught in a storm of grief, anger, and increasingly resolve. Then, on a Tuesday morning, an elegantly addressed envelope arrived in my mailbox. Inside was a wedding invitation, cream-colored cardstock, with gold lettering announcing the union of Franklin Reynolds and Jessica Madison. Tucked inside was a handwritten note from my father. Cornelia, despite everything, you are still my daughter. There is still time to make this right. We are waiting for your apology. Dad. Not an acknowledgement of the evidence I had sent, not a reconsideration of the false accusation. Just a reiteration of the same ultimatum dressed up as an olive branch. Apologize for a crime I never committed or remain cast out from the family. That same afternoon, I received a call from Walter Jenkins, my father's longtime attorney and a family friend. Cornelia, do you have time to come by my office? There is something you should know. An hour later, I sat across from Walter in his wood-paneled office as he slid a document across the desk toward me. Your father came in last week to update his will, Walter said, his expression grave. I thought you should be aware of the changes. I scanned the document, my heart sinking with each paragraph. My father had removed me as his primary beneficiary, replacing me with Jessica. He had also added Allison as a secondary beneficiary, allocating a significant portion of his estate to her. My inheritance had been reduced to a token amount, just enough that I could not contest the will on grounds of being completely disinherited. Is this legal? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Walter sighed heavily. Unfortunately, yes. Your father is of sound mind, at least legally speaking. He has every right to allocate his assets as he sees fit. Even though he is clearly being manipulated. Being naive or gullible is not the same as being mentally incompetent, Walter replied carefully. Believe me, I tried to counsel him against making such drastic changes, especially before the marriage. But he was adamant. I handed the document back, my fingers trembling slightly. Thank you for letting me know. Cornelia, Walter said as I stood to leave. For what it is worth, I believe you. About the necklace, about Jessica. Your father is not thinking clearly right now. His words provided small comfort as I walked to my car. The will changes confirmed what I had feared. Jessica was systematically taking control of every aspect of my father's life and finances. That evening, I contacted a lawyer of my own, Sharon Davis, who specialized in financial fraud cases. I shared everything, the joint accounts, the will, changes, Jessica's history, the false accusation. Based on what you have told me, I can see why you are concerned, Sharon said after reviewing the documents. But legally, your options are limited. Your father voluntarily added Jessica to his accounts. He willingly changed his will. So, there is nothing I can do, I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. Sharon hesitated. There is one thing you should be aware of. As a joint account holder on your father's original accounts, you legally have equal access to those funds. Anything he put into joint accounts with you, you have every right to control. You mean I could withdraw the money? I asked, shocked at the implication. Legally, yes. Joint account holders have equal ownership of the funds regardless of who deposited them. But she cautioned this would be an extreme step with serious personal consequences. Your relationship with your father might never recover. I left her office with a turbulent mix of emotions. The power to act was in my hands, but at what cost would protecting my father's assets justify further damaging our already fractured relationship? Days passed as I wrestled with the decision. Then a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A package arrived at my office with no return address. Inside was a USB drive and a note that read simply, "Thought you should have this. Good luck." I plugged the drive into my computer and found a single video file. It was security camera footage from my father's house, dated the day before Jessica claimed her necklace was stolen. The footage showed Jessica and Allison in the master bedroom. Jessica removed her diamond necklace, placed it in a small bag, and handed it to Allison, who put it in her purse. They then proceeded to have a conversation inaudible on the footage, but their satisfied expressions told the story clearly enough. I sat back in my chair, stunned. Here was irrefutable proof of their deception. I immediately made copies of the file and then tried calling my father, once again straight to voicemail. Instead, I drove to his house, USB drive in hand. When I arrived, Jessica answered the door, her smile freezing when she saw me. "Cornelia, what an unpleasant surprise." "I need to speak with my father," I said firmly. "He is not home," she replied, beginning to close the door. I put my foot in the doorway. I know what you did with the necklace, Jessica. I have proof." For a moment, genuine fear flashed across her face before she composed herself. "I do not know what you are talking about." Security camera footage, from the day before you claimed it was stolen, shows you giving it to Allison. She laughed, but it sounded hollow. "That is ridiculous. Franklin will never believe such an obvious forgery. Let him see it and decide for himself." Just then, my father's car pulled into the driveway. Jessica's expression hardened. "This is your last chance, Cornelia. Drop these accusations and apologize, or you will regret it." My father approached, looking wary. "Cornelia, what are you doing here?" "Dad, I have proof that Jessica and Allison staged the theft. Security camera footage showing them hiding the necklace." I held out the USB drive, but Jessica quickly interjected. "She is lying, Franklin. Probably doctored some video to try to frame us, just like she has been doing with those fake articles and police reports." My father looked between us, uncertainty briefly, crossing his face before it hardened into resolve. "Enough, Cornelia. This vendetta against Jessica has gone too far. Dad, please just look at the footage," I pleaded. "I have seen enough," he said coldly. "Jessica is right. You cannot accept my happiness, so you are trying to destroy it with lies and forgeries." "These are not lies," I exclaimed, desperation making my voice rise. "Why would I make this up? What could I possibly gain?" "Control, Jessica," said smoothly. "You have been controlling your father's life for years, managing his money, making his decisions. Now that he has me, you are no longer the center of his world and you cannot stand it." My father nodded as if her words confirmed everything he had been thinking. "Jessica and I have discussed this at length. Your behavior since our engagement has shown a disturbing pattern of jealousy and manipulation." I could not believe what I was hearing. Every attempt to protect him was being twisted into evidence against me. "So this is your final decision?" I asked, my voice eerily calm despite the turmoil inside me. "You choose to believe her over your own daughter despite all the evidence." "The only evidence I need is how happy Jessica makes me," he replied. "I am giving you one last chance, Cornelia. Apologize to Jessica and welcome her into our family, or do not bother coming to the wedding, or contacting me afterward." Jessica smiled triumphantly beside him, her arm possessively linked through his. In that moment, I saw our future clearly. My father slowly drained of his resources and isolated from everyone who truly cared about him. Jessica moving on to her next victim once she had taken everything of value, and me forever cast as the villain in a story she had masterfully crafted. "I am sorry, Dad," I said quietly, "but I cannot apologize for trying to protect you, and I will not stand by and watch while she destroys your life." With those words, I turned and walked away, the USB drive still clutched in my hand. As I drove home, a plan began to form in my mind. If my father would not protect himself, and the law offered limited recourse, perhaps it was time for more drastic measures. That night, I made my decision. It would cost me my relationship with my father, at least temporarily. But if it saved him from financial ruin and the emotional devastation I had seen in David Thornton's eyes when he spoke of his father, perhaps it was worth the price. With a heavy heart but steady hands, I began preparing for what would be the most difficult action of my life. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday, just 3 days away. According to the most recent bank statements, I had accessed nearly all of my father's liquid assets had been transferred to the joint account he now shared with Jessica. His retirement accounts would be next. I was certain, especially once they were legally married and she could more easily be added as a beneficiary. Time was running out. If I was going to act, it had to be now. I spent Wednesday meticulously planning. First, I opened a new secure bank account at a different institution than the one my father used, ensuring it was in my name only. Then, I consulted again with Sharon, my lawyer, to confirm the legality of what I was about to do, and to create a paper trail documenting my concerns and the evidence I had gathered. "I want to be absolutely clear," Sharon emphasized during our meeting. "As a joint account holder, you have legal access to the funds. However, your father could still contest your actions in court, arguing that the money was never intended for your use. I understand the risks, I replied. But I also understand what will happen if I do nothing. Sharon nodded solemnly. Then make sure you document everything. And Cornelia, be prepared for the fallout. This will not be easy. Thursday morning, I went to work as usual, maintaining the appearance of normalcy. That evening, I wrote a detailed letter to my father, explaining my actions and my reasons. I included copies of all the evidence against Jessica, from the security camera footage to the accounts of her previous victims. I also prepared documentation of every financial decision I had made on his behalf over the years, showing how I had helped grow his savings, not depleted them. Friday morning, the day before the wedding, I called in sick to work. At 9 a.m., when I knew my father would be at his regular gym session and Jessica would be at her final dress fitting, I sat down at my computer and logged into the online banking system. My hands trembled slightly as I navigated to the joint accounts I shared with my father. These were the original accounts set up years ago when I began helping him manage his finances after his accident. Despite the new joint accounts with Jessica, he had not removed me from these older accounts yet, likely an oversight in the whirlwind of wedding preparations. I took a deep breath and began the transfers. First from the main checking account, then the savings, and finally the investment account that I had helped him build over the years. In total, I transferred $420,000, representing nearly all of my father's liquid assets, to the secure account I had established. I left a few $1,000s in each account, enough that immediate bills would not bounce, but not enough for Jessica to get her hands on anything substantial. The entire process took less than 30 minutes, but it felt like hours as I carefully documented each transaction. As I completed the final transfer, a complex mix of emotions washed over me. Part of me felt sick at what I had done, viewing it as a betrayal of the trust my father had once placed in me. Another part felt grimly satisfied, knowing I had just thwarted Jessica's plans. But mostly, I felt a profound sadness that our relationship had deteriorated to this point. I printed the confirmation of all transactions, added them to the file of evidence, and placed everything in a large envelope along with the letter I had written. Then I drove to my father's house and left the envelope in his mailbox. I did not want to be there when he discovered what I had done. That confrontation would come soon enough. I spent Friday night at Natalie's apartment, my phone turned off, unable to face the immediate aftermath. I slept fitfully, dreaming of my father's face contorted with anger and betrayal. Saturday morning, the day of the wedding, I finally turned my phone back on. It immediately exploded with notifications. 27 missed calls from my father. 15 text messages ranging from confused Cornelia, there must be some mistake with the bank accounts, to furious. How could you do this to me? Call me immediately. There were also calls from unknown numbers, likely Jessica or the wedding venue, wondering why the final payments had not gone through. I did not listen to the voicemails, not yet. I needed to steel myself for what was coming. Around 10 a.m., my phone rang again. My father. This time I answered. "How dare you?" he shouted, not bothering with a greeting. "How dare you steal my money?" "I did not steal anything, Dad," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "I protected your assets from someone who has a documented history of financial exploitation." "Did you read the letter I left you?" "I read your lies and excuses," he spat. "Jessica was right about you all along. You are manipulative and jealous, and will do anything to ruin my happiness. Dad, the wedding venue is calling you because your checks are bouncing, are not they? Jessica is furious. Is not she? Ask yourself why. If she truly loved you for you, money would not matter. Return my money immediately," he demanded, "or I will call the police and report you for theft." "It is not theft," I said, my voice finally breaking. "Call Sharon Davis, the attorney I consulted. She will confirm that as a joint account holder, I had every legal right to transfer those funds. What I did was legal, Dad. What Jessica was planning to do to you was not." "You have destroyed everything," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "The wedding is off. The venue canceled when our payment failed. Jessica is devastated." "Is she devastated about not marrying you or about not getting access to your money?" I asked softly. "You will regret this, Cornelia," he said, ignoring my question. "I am calling my lawyer right now. Please do, I replied. And while you are at it, ask him about the security camera footage showing Jessica and Allison hiding the necklace. Ask him about the police reports from her previous relationships. Ask him why, if I am lying about all of this, Jessica's reaction to losing access to your money was to cancel the wedding rather than proceed with a smaller ceremony. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. For a moment, I thought I might have gotten through to him. Then he spoke, his voice cold and distant. You are no longer my daughter. Do not contact me again. The line went dead. I sat on Natalie's couch, phone in hand, tears streaming down my face. I had saved him financially, but I had lost him in every other way that mattered. Throughout the day, I received text updates from family friends who had been invited to the wedding. The ceremony had indeed been canceled at the last minute. Guests were confused. Rumors were flying. Some people had seen Jessica leaving my father's house with her suitcases, Allison in tow, both women looking furious. By evening, a surprising text came from my Uncle Robert, my father's brother. Do not know exactly what happened, but Jessica just tried to cash a check from Frank for $50,000. Bank rejected it. She made quite a scene, starting to think you might have been right about her. I forwarded the text to my father without comment. The next morning, I received an email from Walter Jenkins, my father's attorney. Cornelia, your father has asked me to inform you that he is consulting with litigation attorneys regarding the funds you transferred. However, off the record, I wanted you to know that Jessica's previous divorce attorney contacted me this morning, apparently accidentally thinking I represented her. He mentioned a pattern of similar situations and seemed surprised to hear the wedding had been called off before any assets had been formally joined through marriage. Take from that what you will. Walter. I saved the email as additional evidence. Then I drafted a simple response to any legal threats that might come my way, outlining the evidence I had gathered and my willingness to present it all in court if necessary. But the lawsuit never came. 3 days after the canceled wedding, my father's number appeared on my phone again. This time, when I answered, there was no shouting. The necklace turned up, he said, without preamble, his voice subdued. In Jessica's sister's house. Apparently, Allison had borrowed it for a special event and forgotten to return it. I closed my eyes, relief and vindication washing over me. I see. Jessica and I had a long conversation about it. And about some other discrepancies that have come to light. He paused. She and Allison have moved out. I am sorry, Dad, I said, and I meant it. Sorry for his pain, sorry it had come to this. The money, he continued. I need to know it is safe. Every penny, I assured him. I can transfer it back whenever you are ready. There was a long silence. Then, not yet. I need to sort some things out first. Close some joint accounts. It was the closest he would come for now to admitting I had been right. It was a small victory, but an important one. The first step toward healing the rift between us. Take all the time you need, I said softly. I will be here when you are ready to talk. As I ended the call, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead would be long and difficult. Trust once broken is not easily repaired. But for the first time since this ordeal began, I allowed myself to hope that someday, somehow, my father and I might find our way back to each other. Jessica had underestimated the bond between a father and daughter. She had nearly succeeded in destroying it, but in the end, truth had prevailed. And while my actions had been drastic, they had accomplished what I set out to do: protect my father from someone who would have left him emotionally and financially devastated. Sometimes love means making the hardest choices. And sometimes it means being willing to be seen as the villain in order to do what is right. 6 months passed each day, bringing small steps toward healing. The first month was the hardest. My father and I communicated primarily through lawyers and bank officials as we sorted out the financial aspects of what had happened. I transferred most of the money back to new secure accounts in his name, keeping only the portion that represented my own contributions over the years, which he agreed was fair. Jessica, true to form, disappeared from our lives as quickly as she had entered once she realized there would be no financial windfall. According to mutual acquaintances, she had already moved to another state and was reportedly dating a recently widowed business owner. I considered warning him, but decided against it. Some lessons people unfortunately need to learn for themselves. Allison occasionally posted bitter comments on social media about gold-digging daughters and family betrayal, but these eventually stopped when she found no sympathetic audience among those who knew the whole story. The diamond necklace that had catalyzed everything mysteriously disappeared again after Jessica claimed to have recovered it. My father did not pursue the matter. Some losses, he told me later, were worth accepting if they taught you something valuable about trust and judgment. 3 months after the canceled wedding, my father invited me to coffee. We met at a small cafe halfway between our homes, both of us nervous and uncertain. "You look well," he said awkwardly as we sat down. "So do you," I replied, noting that he had lost weight and looked more like himself again. We made small talk about work and weather, carefully avoiding the elephant in the room, until finally, over his second cup of coffee, my father cleared his throat. "I need to apologize to you, Cornelia," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I was blind, willfully blind. I chose to believe someone I barely knew over my own daughter who has never given me any reason to doubt her." I reached across the table and took his hand. "You were manipulated by someone who is very good at manipulation. It was not entirely your fault. But I should have seen through it," he insisted. "When you showed me the evidence, when you tried to warn me, I shut you out. I wanted so badly to believe I had found happiness again that I ignored every red flag." "We all have blind spots when it comes to love," I said gently. He squeezed my hand. "What you did, taking the money. It was drastic." I agreed, "and I am sorry it came to that, but I would do it again to protect you." "I know," he said, his eyes glistening. "That is why I have asked Walter to restore you as my primary beneficiary, and why I want you to keep your name on one of my accounts just as a safeguard." The trust implicit in that request brought tears to my eyes. After everything, he was willing to put his financial security back in my hands. It was a profound gesture of reconciliation. From that first coffee, we began rebuilding. Weekly dinners became our new tradition. Sometimes we talked about what had happened, processing the painful lessons and lingering hurt. Other times, we deliberately focused on the future, making plans and creating new memories to replace the tainted ones. As for me, the experience changed me in ways I never expected. The pain of betrayal and vindication of truth forced me to examine my own values and boundaries. What would I fight for? What would I sacrifice? Who would I become when tested? I found myself drawn to helping others who had experienced similar situations. I began volunteering with a financial literacy program for seniors, teaching them to recognize and avoid exploitation. Eventually, this volunteer work evolved into a nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting vulnerable adults from financial predators. We called it the Reynolds Trust, and through it I met dozens of people with stories eerily similar to my father's. Men and women who had been manipulated by romantic partners, isolated from their families, and nearly destroyed financially before someone intervened. David Thornton became one of our most dedicated volunteers, channeling his grief over his father's fate into preventing others from suffering the same outcome. Together, we created educational materials, support groups, and a legal aid fund for families fighting to protect their loved ones. My father often joined us at events, bravely sharing his own experience as a cautionary tale. I was lucky, he would tell audiences. My daughter was willing to risk our relationship to save me from myself. Not everyone has a Cornelia in their corner. On a personal level, the ordeal taught me about the complexity of love and forgiveness. True love sometimes means making painful choices. True forgiveness does not erase the past, but builds a new future alongside it. One evening, about a year after everything happened, my father and I sat on his back porch watching the sunset, a comfortable silence between us. "You know what I realized recently?" he said, breaking the quiet. "When your mother left, you stepped up to take care of me. You put your dreams on hold, restructured your life around my needs. I never fully appreciated the sacrifice that represented until I nearly lost you." "I did it because I love you," I said simply. "I know," he nodded. "But I think I became too dependent on that love, too comfortable with your sacrifices. Maybe that is why it was so easy for Jessica to convince me you were controlling rather than caring. Because deep down, I felt guilty about how much I had taken from you. His insight surprised me. I never saw it that way. I never regretted staying. Maybe not, he said. But I think it is time for both of us to prioritize our own paths forward. You with your organization, me with my retirement plans. Connected but independent. In that moment, I realized we had both grown through this painful chapter. The father who had once been willing to cast me aside for questioning his choices was now encouraging my independence. And I, who had been willing to sacrifice anything for his well-being, was learning to build a life that belonged fully to me. The most profound lesson in all of this was not about money or manipulation or even family loyalty. It was about the dignity that comes from standing in your truth even when it costs you dearly. It was about having the courage to act when action is needed to protect those you love even when they cannot see the danger themselves. Sometimes love means letting go, sometimes it means holding on tighter than ever. The wisdom lies in knowing which is needed when. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard, I thought about the ultimatum that had started it all: apologize, or be banned from the wedding. In refusing to bend to that unjust demand, I had lost a wedding but saved a family. In choosing dignity over approval, I had found a strength I never knew I possessed. And in that strength, I had discovered the most important truth of all: that our worth is not determined by others' willingness to see it, but by our own courage to stand firm when it matters most. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect someone you love, even when they could not see the danger? Or stood your ground when pressured to compromise your values? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else facing a similar challenge. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more tales of family redemption and finding strength in the most difficult moments. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most profound healing.